Hi, this is Li-Toroptsov, and you're listening to Image is Psyche, a podcast dedicated to our fantasy lives. In today's episode, I would like to share with you my experience of visiting a remarkable exhibition. It's a show in a Swiss National Museum. It's called Landscapes of the Soul, C.G. Jung and the Exploration of the Human Psyche in Switzerland. Last year, in 2025, we celebrated C.G. Jung's 150th anniversary. So this show at the Swiss National Museum is in fact a timely and important show. I think the Swiss are doing a great job of promoting and celebrating the contribution Switzerland has made into the world of psychiatry through a number of pioneering figures and institutions. To give you an example, Eugen Bleuler, a Swiss psychiatrist who coined the term schizophrenia in 1908. Bleuler first used this term in a lecture in Germany, in Berlin, where he spoke of the splitting of mental functions like thought and emotion. He then wrote this in a book in 1911, and the old term dementia praecox was dropped in favor of schizophrenia because it better captured the splitting and didn't imply the inevitable decline. Another example of such a remarkable contribution would be Hermann Rorschach, who was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who created the famous inkblot test. The test is widely used even today, and it's a projective psychological assessment test that uses 10 symmetrical cards, inkblots, to measure, to elicit unconscious perceptions and therefore reveal personality traits. And in the show, we see a couple of preliminary drawings of the second Rorschach plate. So we are like in 1917, 1918. And this is really rare because even today there is a reasonable amount of secrecy that surrounds the Rorschach test. Why? Because it's considered to be detrimental to the efficacy of the test if, for instance, the 10 cards of the test were wildly available. As a result, if you're not a psychologist, you cannot buy a test for that particular reason. Or for example, if you're reading an article in the media about the test and you see an illustration, what looks like an authentic original card coming from the test, it's not. Very often it's a simulation card. The actual cards from the test remain protected. So seeing a preliminary drawing for the card number 2, it's moving because here we are entering the creative process of Hermann Rorschach. And these are only 2 examples of how important the contribution of Swiss scientists have been to the field of psychiatry and psychoanalysis. In fact, it would be appropriate to ask this question, why? Why Switzerland has made this considerable contribution into those fields? This is where the exhibition starts, in fact. Psychogeography, Switzerland as a map of the soul. Let me read a short passage from the catalog. The land of dark forests, serene lakes, and deep tunnels has long been the scene of excavation in search of the human soul. So in a way, what's in the water and the air in Switzerland that somehow makes it psychoactive? And this passage alone throws me back to my own experience, because When I was deciding to join the training program at the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, located, by the way, on the shore of Lake Zurich in an absolutely paradisiac location, which is actually very propitious to this kind of going deep into the psyche, I had a dream. And in that dream, I was crossing a border to a country which looked like Switzerland. And that country was an important destination for me. Jung spoke about genius loci, which is a Latin term which translates as spirit of the place. And it refers to a unique character or atmosphere or a protective essence of a specific location. And I think Switzerland has that. Somehow it's the land of the psyche. Somehow the psyche just feels great in Switzerland in a way. So that's what psychogeography is. And that's what the first exhibition hall of this show in a way presents. We see the pages of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions dating back to 1765, for example. I didn't know that Jean-Jacques Rousseau did his own self-analysis, what he called his own childhood perversions. Well, we know that Freud did self-analysis, Jung did self-analysis, but I've never heard about Rousseau. And the interesting thing that Rousseau did a lot of walking in the forests, which he called his writing room. So his connection to the landscape was really important. Again, psychogeography, how what you see, how where you walk, how where you are, in fact, affects your psychological states. It's also in this room that you see probably the masterpiece of the entire show, a painting of Henry Fuseli called The Nightmare, dating to 1790. Fuseli did several versions of this painting. This particular one exhibited in Zurich comes from the Goethe House, the Goethe Museum in Frankfurt, and I had a chance to see it there. And it's this painting that actually on the cover of the exhibition catalog, which is a beautiful, beautiful publication. You've probably seen this painting many, many times because it is traditionally used to illustrate nightmares. On the foreground of the painting, we see a female figure that is stretched on a couch, on a bed, and completely abandoned to sleep. Her hands are over her head, and on her chest there sits a monster, some sort of like a demonic presence. In the background, through a large dark curtain, there comes a mare's head, or head of a horse. And the eyes of the horse are filled with white paint, making it a very ghostly, nightmarish figure. So it's interesting, Fuseli painted this in the end of the 18th century. But we already feel the presence of what later will be labeled as the unconscious. So what is the unconscious, and why is it important here? And what is the relationship between the unconscious, depth psychology, and art? We very often associate the discovery of the unconscious or the invention of the unconscious with Sigmund Freud. It's not entirely true because the term the unconscious appeared earlier in late 18th century in Germany. But Freud is nevertheless someone who profoundly popularized and systematized the concept within clinical psychology and psychoanalysis. Freud placed the unconscious into the center of his theory of neurosis, dream interpretation, repression, and psychoanalytic therapy. But what is the unconscious? The unconscious mind refers to mental processes operating outside conscious awareness that still shape thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. In Freud's view, our mind was an iceberg. We know that an iceberg, there's a tip of the iceberg, the small visible part. That's the conscious part of the mind. It handles rational thought. This is everything what you know about yourself, about the world, about the people around you. Then there's a part that is submerged into water. Not deep. It's very close to the surface. So it's in the water, but you can still see parts of this iceberg. So for Freud, that was the preconscious level, which stores memories, but they can be easily recalled. And then there's the unconscious, or the vast submerged base, which holds repressed desires, traumatic memories, and instincts. So, and this part that is completely invisible in the darkness of the abyss, it exerts influence through different ways, like according to Freud again, through the slips of the tongue, through dreams at night, or through neurosis. This was a revolutionary idea that entered the consciousness of the human kind at the time. It's a realization that it's not only about our consciousness, that there is this vast gravitational field that affects us tremendously, called the unconscious, and one of its primary characteristics of this gravitational field of the unconscious is its invisibility. We cannot see it. And this is where art steps in. And because of their sensibilities, artists often feel what's in the air in terms of collective thinking, in terms of the energies that animate and constellate in certain societies. If you truly want to connect to the spirit of the time of a certain historical period, it's really important to look at what kind of art and music was created during that time. You'll find a lot of answers, the mood, the subjects that were important. So art precedes history, and artists have been doing a great job of articulating in visual form, in music, in theater, dance, or any other medium, things that haven't reached yet the consciousness of a spoken word. And this is the subject of depth psychology. So when Freud published his interpretation of dreams in 1900, he sold only a couple of copies. So this revolutionary idea of the unconscious took some time to develop. But it completely fascinated C.G. Jung, who was another pioneering figure in Swiss psychiatry. In this exhibition, there's a signed copy of a first edition of Freud's book, Interpretation of Dreams, that he gave to C.G. Jung. The anecdote says that when they met, Freud and Jung, they spoke for 13 hours straight. So it shows how exciting this meeting of the minds was. This exhibition is very rich, and there's so much to see and so much time to spend to look at everything that's exhibited. So I'm going over just certain pieces that attracted my attention. But the show is still going on until the 15th of February 2026. And if you don't get to travel to Zurich and see the show in person, well, think about buying a catalog, which is a beautiful publication which gives a wonderful account of the show. What I particularly like about this show is the presence of modern and contemporary art. What it does, it creates bridges to what's happening today. To give you an example, next to Freud's letters, There's a painting by Marlène Dumas called Nuclear Family, which she painted in 2013. Or you find a work of art by Louise Bourgeois, Fillette, 1968. The show's curator, Stefan Zweifel, did a wonderful job of creating a complete and very detailed panoramic view of the subject. Historically, psychiatry and early psychoanalysis were dominated by males. So there's a section in the exhibition about the role of women in the development of these disciplines, along with already familiar names like Emma Jung and Sabine Spielrein. We find a myriad of other ones lesser known. Now let's go to what I believe is the la pièce de résistance of this exhibition, C.G. Jung's Red Book. It's the second time I've come in contact with the Red Book. The first time was in 2011, I believe, in Paris, where it was exhibited at the Musée Guimet. But these two encounters with this remarkable object were very different. So what is the Red Book? Well, I guess it depends who you ask, because the Red Book can be many different things. It's a precious object that is kept in a bank and still belonging to the large Jung family, so that can be a description of it. The Red Book is also a publication that saw the light of day 48 years after Jung's death. The Red Book is also a record of an incredible personal experience, a night sea journey, a record so personal, so private, that Jung believed that if it were published during his lifetime, it could have destroyed his professional reputation. The Red Book is a record of a soul retrieval. The Red Book is poetry and literature. The Red Book is a journal of a psychotic man. So you see, the range is enormous. In 1913, when Jung broke up with Freud, he went into a personal crisis, which he labeled confrontation with the unconscious. It's interesting because the breakup between Freud and Jung stemmed primarily from irreconcilable theoretical differences and personal tensions, which escalated around 1912 and 13. So Freud insisted on sexuality, and particularly on the sexual nature of the libido, as the central driver of the psyche, and he viewed the unconscious as a repository of repressed sexual trauma. For Jung, that was too narrow of a vision, and Jung proposed a broader collective unconscious, which is filled with the universal archetypes. And so in a way, that was this theory. But the Red Book is the practice. It's in the Red Book that we find the collective unconscious, this notion that Jung developed. We find the archetypes of the collective unconscious, anima, animus, and other multiple figures that are populating our psyche. So how did he do that? What exactly was he doing? Jung was using a technique which he developed and called active imagination. So according to Jung, this is one of the most potent ways of connecting to the unconscious. There's a lot of literature about active imagination. So initially he would write these things in what he called his black books, and later this content would be transferred to the Red Book. And Jung took time to work on that Red Book. He decorated with some exquisite drawing and calligraphy. And Jung worked on his Red Book from 1913 to 1930. My soul, where are you? Do you hear me? I speak. I call you. Where are you? I have returned. I'm here again. I have shaken the dust of all the lands from my feet, and I have come to you. I am with you. After long years of long wandering, I have come to you again. Should I tell you everything I have seen, experienced, and drunken? Or do you not want to hear about all the noise of life and the world? But one thing you must know, the one thing I have learned, is that one must live this life. This life is the way, the long sought after way to the unfathomable, which we call divine. There is no other way. All other ways are false paths. So here you have it. Now you can probably understand why Jung was not so convinced to publish this while he was still alive. It wasn't a complete secret either. Very close people to Jung had a chance to read it, and several patients reported that Jung had, on occasion, his Red Book in his office. So he would allow them to see his own process, and he would encourage them to write their dreams, to draw their dreams, and do the same kinds of active imagination themselves, to draw mandala and so on. So Jung was using this as a teaching instrument as well. And it is in the same exhibition hall as the Red Book. On the walls to the right, you can see some artwork that belongs to some of Jung's patients. So it's a similar product in a way. It's a similar result of a different personal process. And that particular patient art in the exhibition comes from the picture archive of the C.G. Jung Institute in Küsnacht. I already did an episode about that, so if you're curious, you can look it up. So the Red Book is the result of this very deep inner dialogue that Jung had with himself. It is a record of what he named the individuation process. It's a difficult process of integration of the unconscious, of holding of the tension of the opposites, finding the unique meaning of one's purpose in life, of one's myth. This is a language we are not using a lot in mental health these days. It's more about tools and techniques, less about the meaning of it all. So no wonder this whole Red Book business can appear incredibly obsolete on the surface, with the language that is no longer practiced, with the divine that has been evacuated from our lives. But if you look closer, what Jung was doing with the Red Book is not so different from what the shamans do with soul retrieval. And considering that shamanism is probably our most ancient religious practice, it places Jung's Red Book project into a larger framework. And of course, presumably we still have a soul, but we're just probably asking less and less the question that Jung was asking, my soul, where are you? But if you do ask yourself this question, then Jung can show the way, because he's done it and he's been there in the depth of the soul. And the Red Book is the record of it. And this brings us to the notion of creativity. And in Jung's mind, it was very closely akin to an instinct. And Jung identified 5 instinctive factors: hunger, sexuality, activity, reflection, and creativity. And saying that the creativity has a close connection with the instincts. So, and the roots of it all is, of course, is in the unconscious. So creativity is a way how the unconscious and the psyche expresses itself naturally. There are wonderful pieces of patient art from the collection of the Lausanne Museum of Art Brut, or what sometimes is called outsider art. There's also a lot of documents. For instance, I didn't know that Nijinsky spent much of his later life in psychiatric hospitals, because in 1919 he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and spent some time at the Bellevue Sanatorium in Kreuzlingen under Ludwig Binswanger. And the show ends with a major piece by the artist Heidi Bücher that is related to the Binswangers, because it's a piece called The Parlor Office of Dr. Binswanger, Bellevue Sanatorium. So she did this in 1988. So the artist coated the walls, doors, and the surfaces with liquid latex over fabric, and she let it dry and then peeled it away in one piece. So in a way she captured the textures, the paneling, and the patina that these walls conserved, and she transformed this rigid psychiatric space into this kind of very fragile and skin-like sculpture. It's like what you call memory extraction, you know. It's as if she liberated something that these walls has seen, have witnessed, and you know, it's very psychoactive in a way as a piece. And Bücher is very sensitive. Being a woman artist, of course, she pays a special attention to this critique of patriarchal and clinical hierarchies that existed and still probably do. Lots of women patients have gone through those consulting rooms dominated by male doctors. It's a very powerful piece, and it is hanging from the ceiling. And when you leave the exhibition, because this is the final piece of the exhibition, you have to pass through this skin-like sculpture hanging from the ceiling. It's very powerful, truly. So this is the end of the exhibition, and the only thing you see is this immense museum staircase going down. And what the museum did to use this staircase in a way to amplify the message of the show is very, very smart. They built several what looks like psychoanalytic couches, and they decorated them using the pattern from the Freud's office. This very kilim-like, beautiful, beautiful coverings. And so you see a bunch of them going down as the staircase goes down. And they placed what looks like earphones. So immediately you think, oh, you can lie down and you can listen to something. Well, you're wrong. You can certainly lie down, but when you take the earphones, or what looks like earphones, and you put them on your head, you realize that those are not speakerphones, but earmuffs, or very powerful earplugs, that in fact cut all the outside noise and leave you with the noise in your head. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a chance to visit this wonderful exhibition. And I would like to thank Denise Tunella, director of the Swiss National Museum, for the wonderful welcome, and the show's curator, Stefan Zweifel, for the wonderful tour.